Confessions are chilling, especially when they come from a serial killer. Every word they speak, every pause, every shift in tone reveals a glimpse into their twisted psyche. Are they remorseful, or do they relish in their crimes? Their body language, their mood, the way they recount their horrors, all adds to the eerie truth of who they really are. There's something deeply unsettling about hearing a killer in their own words. Welcome back to Prison Stories. Today, we will discuss some of the most unsettling confessions ever recorded. We'll dissect the body language of killers, analyze their mental state, and take a peek into the dark minds of these notorious serial killers to answer one chilling question. Why?
I'm BTK. Yeah, I'm the guy they're after, 100%.
Dennis Rader, or the self-proclaimed BTK, is a masterclass in psychopathy. After playing games with police for 30 years, he only confessed after he was caught in 2005 because of his own arrogance, sending a floppy disk that traced back to him. Once in custody, he didn't resist. Instead, he proudly detailed his crimes, almost like he was narrating a personal achievement. Rader was cold, detached, and disturbingly methodical. He didn't seem remorseful or disturbed by his own actions. Instead, he described his murders with clinical precision, as if he was explaining a routine task. He referred to his victims as projects and showed no emotional connection to what he had done. His confession in court and how he go about explaining each act of cruelty explains a lot about his mental state. It was like he was giving performance or explaining a theory without emotions, remorse, or any kind of guilt. His confession was detailed. He explained how he stalked, broke into homes, and restrained his victims, treating each murder as a strategic operation. He spoke casually about his dark side and how he balanced being a family man with being a killer. His lack of emotion made his confession even more chilling.
No, that was part of my, what you call fantasy. These people were selected.
What was more chilling than confessions was the fact that Rader looked like an ordinary man. There wasn't anything in his behavior or any extraordinary wit, charm, or intellect to strike the other person. Maybe that was why he was able to carry on with all that for years. He looked like such a random guy with a random life. But despite that normal look, he has nothing normal if we peek inside his psyche.
I had did some thinking on what I was going to do to either Mrs. Otero or Josephine.
BTK was almost robotic. He didn't take blame for all that he did. Instead, shrugged the responsibility as if he was made like that. There wasn't any struggle with guilt or moral conflict. He spoke as if he was simply reporting facts. There wasn't any trace of thought that what he did was awfully wrong. His confession felt less like a burden and more like a moment he had been waiting for, as if he wanted recognition for his crimes.
About serial killers, they go through what they call the different phases. That's one of the phases they go through as a trolling stage. You're looking for a victim at that time.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Unlike most killers who were caught after years of investigation, Kemper's case was different. He turned himself in, willingly called the police, and confessed. At first, they didn't even believe him. He had to insist before they took him seriously. He was calm, confident, and relaxed. No panic, no remorse, no hesitation. He spoke about his crimes like someone recalling old memories. He didn't look like a man burdened by guilt or struggling with regret. He looked entirely comfortable with himself, like someone having a casual conversation.
Rage is got. I was raging inside. There was just incredible energies.
Kemper gave detailed and precise confessions. He explained how he picked up victims, how he killed them, and even described post-mortem acts with disturbing casualness. He analyzed his own behavior as if he were an outsider studying a case. This was where Kemper was different from others. He wasn't someone clueless. He was a man of 147 IQ. He analyzed himself with a cold detachment, though he too shifted the blame to his mother and her upbringing. There was an acceptance of himself, but the only person he held responsible was not himself, but his mother.
My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated.
Unlike killers who deny, manipulate, or break down, Kemper seemed almost comfortable with his confessions. He joked, he laughed, and he showed no struggle with what he had done. His confessions weren't a burden to him. They were just another conversation. His interviews revealed how he understood himself and his urges. He accepted himself. He understood he posed a threat to society and should be stayed locked up. What was striking in his personality was his apparent likability.
My frustration, my inability to communicate socially, sexually. I wasn't impotent, but emotionally I was impotent.
Israel Keyes was caught in 2012 after using a victim's debit card, which led authorities straight to him. At first, he was careful with his words, only giving vague details. His confessions were different than any other serial killer. He didn't try to evade responsibility or to deny anything. He in fact told authorities the kind of serial killer he was and the horrors he had committed. But he was a control freak. He liked to play games with the FBI, revealing only a little to prick their curiosity and to hide others. It was also a pattern of him demanding things, favors in return for information. He had a family, and his only concern was that information should not get public. Keyes was more strategic. He wanted to control the narrative and even bargain with investigators, offering information only if certain conditions were met. He wanted a cigar, edibles. His information should not be leaked, but most importantly, he wanted the death penalty. It says a lot about his state of mind. He knew the horrors he had committed won't allow him ever to see the sky outside of prison. So he demanded a death penalty in exchange of information. He was calm, confident, and eerily composed. Unlike someone weighed down by their crimes, he spoke without guilt or hesitation. He was articulate, intelligent, and even amused at times, almost enjoying the conversation. He admitted he had no remorse and found pleasure in killing, which made him even more unsettling. Keyes confessed to multiple murders across the U.S., explaining how he traveled extensively and buried kill kits in different locations for future crimes. He described his meticulous planning, how he chose victims at random, ensured they had no connection to him, and avoided patterns to stay undetected for years. He also talked about the thrill of the hunt and how he took satisfaction in being one step ahead of authorities. Keyes wasn't driven by impulse or rage. He was methodical, patient, and deliberate. His confession revealed a highly organized killer who thrived on control. Unlike BTK, who sought attention, Keyes enjoyed staying anonymous. He even seemed frustrated that he got caught, knowing that with more time, he could have continued killing without ever being identified.
Why did you kill those people?
No comment. No comment.
Unlike other killers on this list, Richard Ramirez never actually confessed to his murders. Even after his arrest in 1985, he showed no interest in admitting guilt or detailing his crimes. Instead, he played into his own dark persona, embracing the idea of being pure evil rather than confessing to specific acts. Ramirez was arrogant, defiant, and almost theatrical. He showed no remorse, no fear, and no hesitation. Instead, he seemed to enjoy his reputation. He spoke about Satanism, darkness, and power, often smirking or laughing during interviews.
As concerned, I believe in a malevolent being. His description eludes me, but I have felt powers that are evil.
Unlike killers who cracked under pressure, Ramirez reveled in the attention, fully embracing his Night Stalker identity.
I don't care about myself, really. I don't care about what happens to me. I never did.
I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them.
Unlike many serial killers who resist confessing, Dahmer admitted everything almost immediately.
But because I wanted to keep them with me.
When police searched his apartment and found horrific evidence, including human remains, he didn't try to deny anything from the moment he was caught. He seemed resigned to his fate and cooperated fully with investigators. Dahmer was calm, soft-spoken, and disturbingly rational. He didn't show signs of excitement or arrogance like Ramirez or BTK. Instead, he spoke matter-of-factly, as if he were explaining a routine task. His tone was not aggressive or defensive, but he also didn't appear deeply remorseful, just resigned, like someone who had already accepted his own monstrosity. Dahmer confessed to 17 murders and went into graphic detail about his crimes. He admitted to necrophilia, cannibalism, and keeping body parts as trophies. He also revealed his twisted attempt to create a living zombie. Unlike killers who bragged about their crimes, Dahmer seemed more reflective and analytical, as if he were explaining a psychological experiment gone wrong. His confession remains chilling as despite his horrific acts, he seemed completely sane. He even knew what he did was evil beyond belief, but remained cold and resigned as if he accepted himself and was helpless about it. When asked if he still feels same compulsion, his answer was straight yes.
Urges, do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
Ted Bundy's confession were different from any of the serial killers we have discussed. For years, Bundy denied everything. He manipulated the media, charmed interviewers, and insisted he was innocent. But as his execution date drew closer, he realized time was running out. In a last-ditch effort to delay his death, he finally started confessing. It was only in the mid of January 1989 that Bundy finally confessed. But motives behind his confession was not guilt or as he was tired of carrying burden. Interesting, in Rule, a writer who befriended Bundy before he was ever even a murder suspect, wrote in her true crime book Bundy didn't think to confess earlier because he never felt any guilt which would prompt him to do so. His confession was another of his strategic move to save his life.
For the record, you are guilty of killing many women and girls.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Ted, how did
However, even then he was strategic, confessing the third person at first, as if analyzing another killer. Only later did he fully admit to his crimes.
How certain feelings and ideas developed in me to the point where I began to act out on them. Certain very violent and very destructive feelings.
Bundy remained composed, articulate, and even charismatic. Unlike Dahmer, who was resigned to his fate, or BTK, who craved control, Bundy treated his confession like a psychological study. He spoke intelligently, carefully choosing his words, as if he were still trying to outsmart those listening. He did express some remorse, but the fact that he confessed only days before execution makes it look empty. Bundy eventually admitted to 30 murders, though the real number is likely much higher. He described how he would lure victims with fake injuries. He admitted of even severing heads, acts of necrophiles, and much more horrible details that were in stark contrast to the image he has been trying to build of himself. But even in his last interview, instead of taking on full responsibility, he shifted the blame on pornography and action movies. Bundy's confession was not about guilt. It was about controlling the narrative.
Pornographic books of a harder nature than more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store. And this also included such things as, let's say, detective magazines and...
Bundy confessed only when it benefited him. And in true Bundy fashion, he never revealed everything, taking his final secrets to the grave.
Are not some kinds of inherent monsters. We are your sons and we are your husbands. And we grew up in regular families.
These confessions offer a rare glimpse into the minds of these killers. But in the end, no matter what they blamed their dark fantasies, childhood abuse, or external influences, the truth remains. They alone were responsible for their actions. Ultimately, each of them made a conscious choice to walk the path of evil. The purpose of highlighting these confessions is not to glorify them, but to understand that these individuals were not supernatural monsters. They were ordinary people who chose to give in to their darkest urges. For anyone struggling with such thoughts, there are always better choices. Seeking help is always an option, before it's too late for them and others. Thank you for watching Prison Stories. If you found this video interesting, like, share, and subscribe for more videos from dark chapters of true crime. Stay safe.